Hi everyone. For this afternoon's game of General Dame, me and Charlie are playing the Battle of Hermandad, which is another scenario from the Vitoria scenario book. In this scenario, the French are defending the village of Hermandad against an attack by what looks like the Light Division, a very elite force of British, including a number of light battalions and a couple of battalions of the 95th Rifles. Just take a look at the initial deployment. We've done a couple of turns of approach marches and some exchanges of artillery fire, so we're actually on the beginning of turn 3. As we can see, on the left of Hermandad, we have the French artillery battery formed up on the hill in support of our French infantry brigade. This brigade, unfortunately, is made up of reservists. There they are, and they're facing off against a determined assault by a British brigade of 4 battalions. The British give themselves a forwards order for the last 2 turns, so this brigade has moved significantly in advance of the rest of their units. Their skirmish line is already in contact. The four battalions themselves. Take a look. Are moving rapidly into contact. There we go. As we pull back, we can see the rest of the British line across the, just reach the edge and a line of ditches, so you've got some very small hills. They represent a line of ditches in advance of the village which give them light cover. So you've got 2 very small elite British brigades of a rifle and a light battalion. Sorry, the light's a bit bad. I'll have to get a bit closer. It's a quite dull day outside today. So 2 very small brigades and then a brigade of Portuguese on the British left flank. Facing off against those, so I say we've got a French brigade of reservists, then in the village of Hermandad itself. We've got 1 built up area. We've got that being occupied, a light battalion at the moment, supported by 2 line battalions. Take a look at those. They've just turned to their flank to potentially move to the left-hand side of the village to reinforce against that British attack that's coming in there. As we move across, the French have a foot artillery battery on the edge of the village, 2nd better battery, a brigade in reserve, and then a small brigade on the right flank, a mixture of Confederation of the Rhine, Nassau troops and French battalions, 2 small Nassau battalions, and some French infantry supporting them in a mixed brigade. Right, so here we are at the end of turn 2, just about to start and roll for initiative in turn 3. Right, we're at the beginning of turn 4, some mixed results for the British. The right-hand elements of this attacking brigade did well and drove off the French battalion, who recoiled in front of the British charge and actually got a retreat result and disappeared off table. However, the 2nd battalion that was assaulting is actually the rearmost of these 2 now. It was driven off by the French defensive volley, went into retreat, failed its discipline test, failed its charge test, only rolled a 5 and the French rolled a double 6, and retreated back through its compatriots, so they have become disordered. So a bit of a gap on this flank due to the loss of that French battalion. They'll have to try and sort that out and look to their reserves, which are starting to head in their direction from down here in the village. Otherwise, on the rest of the battlefield, nothing really moved. Both of the British elite brigades, veteran brigades, remained hesitant, so they're still steadfastly on the baseline. Whereas if we go across, the Portuguese made the conscious decision not to advance, as the French have a substantial number of troops on this flank, outnumbering them by 8 battalions to 3. and the French actually have decided to be aggressive, and the refused flank is now starting to unwind and go on the offensive and start a flanking movement of its own, pivoting on the Nassau battalions, trying to take those Portuguese in the flank. So a lot happening on both flanks, but the centre remains pretty static. There we are at the beginning of turn 4. Right, at the start of turn 5, all brigades are active, so for both French and the British, and the British have the initiative. So we'll see how the turn plays out. I think the French will continue their flanking attack from the right, and the British will continue their assault way over here on the left. The French have done some redeployment. They've moved their skirmish line to harass the British there. They've pivoted their artillery, and their reserve battalions are starting to move in, and their army reserve has also started moving to the left. So we'll see how turn 5 plays. British look poised to strike against the corner of the French position again. Taking a view from the British lines this time, from the beginning of turn 6, you can see that French battalion still holding on in the cornfield. Again, it's repelled the attack of the British 2 line battalions. We've now finally got the rifles over the hedge line, but their light battalion brethren have failed to move forward. British artillery is still continuing to bombard the village, and the first 2 British battalions from the other elite brigade have finally moved forward out of the ditch and are moving up to attack the village. The Portuguese remain in reserve. Just swing round to take a view from the French side. The flank attack is starting to go in. The French battalions moving forward against the Portuguese with their Nassau support. French foot artillery battery here has taken a few casualties now from those skirmishers. They need to be driven away, really. Might do a counter-attack with that line, or it might be a light battalion sitting in reserve there, as the Portuguese show no sign of moving. Across to the centre, we can see those British battalions forming up, ready for attack. Those ones are plastic Paris, most of my troops are metal Paris. They're facing up to start attacking the village, garrisoned by its French light infantry battalion. And then as we move on to this flank, it's a bit more of a mess. Our artillery battery is causing heavy casualties on that British infantry brigade as it moves forward, so I'm not sure the assault on this flank is going to be successful. It has drawn some reserves from the French, so 2 more battalions coming to reinforce this flank, but the British are stuttering a bit here, so it's not looking too bad for the French at this stage as we start turn 7. As we start turn 8, things are hotting up in the battle. Unfortunately for the French, their flanking force went hesitant, so no movement there, and some exchange of skirmish fire, but not much else going on this flank. French reserves continue to move along the back of the table edge, and the village is still firmly in French control, but the 2 British battalions, elite and veteran, are now closing in for the assault, having left the line of the ditch. Over on this flank, the French columns have formed up from march column into attack column, getting ready to potentially assault the weak British battalion, which exchanged shots with its skirmish line with that artillery battery and took some casualties itself. And here in the corner, this French battalion also is being eroded now, as it's now facing off against no less than 3 British battalions, all of whom are in a position to volley it or its skirmish screen at this turn. 1 British battalion still remains fixated about staying in the ditch and enjoying the cover there. So otherwise, we'll see how we go as we move into turn 8. Right, we're just starting turn 9, and quite an eventful turn. One of the 95th Rifle Battalions, of which we've got 2 on the table, there we go, that's in there, have made the first successful charge of the game, pushing back and forcing to retreat the French battalion that was defending the edge of that field. Meanwhile, over here, British battalions continue to sort of squeeze the French position. The French reinforcements have started to arrive. Their 1st battalion has moved through the gun line to try and form a defensive position to protect the guns. and the second battalion of reinforcements also moved in, but took some artillery fire from the British and has gone unformed, unfortunately. So this flank still looking a bit dicey for the French. In the centre, things went well. The French 16th Light successfully defended the village against the British, I think it's the 52nd Light, so an elite battalion, and threw them back when they charged into the village. I'm sure the British will have another go next turn, with the 2nd Battalion of the Rifle Regiment having a go to come in. And over on the far flank, you can just see there the French flanking attack is finally approaching the Portuguese, but I don't think that's going to have much bearing on the overall outcome of the game. It looks like it's going to be very much a fight for the centre as the British try and break into the village and break these two French brigades that are cornerstone of the defence. The others, I think, will be very much a sideshow. Alright, on we go with turn 9. Alright, we're at the beginning of turn 10, and the French assaults look like they're about to go in this turn on the Portuguese. 2 battalions in column and a couple of lines in support. The French artillery battery here, because they haven't dealt with those skirmishers and probably won't, are now down to about 8 casualties, so pretty much ineffective now. And the Portuguese done a good job of holding them off. In the centre, things have gone well for the British. The 95th Rifles made it into the village on the first assault. There they go, they've got inside. And the French are lined up to counter-attack this turn, 3 battalions, but unfortunately all the reservists, I think. I'll just check the status of those battalions. But 3 battalions ready to counter-attack in, try and recapture the village from the British. And over on the other flank, the confused melee continues. The French failed to charge home against the weakened British battalion and just let off a ragged volley. And then the 2nd Battalion of the 95th Rifles also failed to make its charge home and has just been exchanging volleys with that French battalion. Still the French looking at a precarious position over here. Still one retreating unit back here. The brigade was hesitant. So we'll see how EDC allocations go this turn. A lot of British battalions here, but they've all taken very heavy casualties from the French artillery and musketry. So not an awful lot of threat left on this flank. It's really down to whether the 95th Rifles can hang on and whether some support can arrive to secure their hold on the village. So confident at the start of turn 10, and things have gone a bit pear-shaped. So in turn 11, right, this is the beginning of turn 11. As you can see, the 2 attacking French columns that went in against the Portuguese were rebuffed. Good volley fire from the Portuguese drove the French away. The Nassau element of the brigade has moved up to exchange volleys. We'll see how that goes. In the centre, the 1st French column has charged in against the village and been repulsed by the Rifles. In the meantime, the British support has now moved up, so there's some counter-attack ability to try and retain the village. These are only reservists, so they're finding it quite hard to push the Rifles out. And over here, things have simplified a lot. Unfortunately, the Dutch skirmishers took out the artillery battery over on the other flank. That was part of some of the infantry brigade over here. We had 2 falter tests, but only were rolled 1 command dice. So we lost the last unit of the reserve brigade that was holding this corner. They've now disappeared. This now looks like a defensive position really for the French here, where the 2 battalions that form part of the formation that was originally holding the village remain committed to defence of this flank. The British are still reasonably weak here, but that 95th Rifles battalion is still pretty... that one is still in pretty good health, so still a bit of a threat here, and we'll see. So Charles has broken his 1st brigade and holds the village. If he manages to break the 2nd brigade, he's then won this game. Just doing a shot at turn 12. French are still holding this corner. They're having another go assaulting into the village. And otherwise, it's pretty much stalemate over here. We'll see how this turn goes. Be back in a minute. Turn 13, the French are hanging on. They've managed to destroy the Rifle Brigade. Their battalion charged in, both battalions charged in, pushed the Rifles and the 52nd Light out of the village. so they've reoccupied the village, but we've got a second battalion about to break. This one here's right-hand battalion has been subject to the rifles and rifle-lighted skirmishers, machine gun volleying, and is already up to 11 casualties, so gonna go this turn. So that brigade again will break. Over on the right flank, the French tank is again getting ready to have another go and see if it can break that Portuguese brigade. Still quite a lot going on. There's still 3 French battalions in the centre, hanging on grimly, and there's not much British around, so they may be able to stay in there. On with turn 13. Yeah, on with turn 13. Right, turn 14, and the French are just hanging on in this corner, but heavily surrounded by Allied units, so that battalion's, I'm sure, going to collapse any second. In the centre, they're still holding the village. They've got 1 battalion in, another battalion in reserve, and a battalion on their flank as well. But they are just being attacked by the next veteran British brigade. They're coming in with relatively low casualties, so we'll see how they do. They're going to try and seize the village this turn. We're on turn 14, and over here there's really just musketry exchanges between both formations. They're both looking pretty resilient, so they'll probably last out the game. Alright, on we go with turn 14. Right, the game is all over at the end of turn 15, I think this is. Over here, pretty decent result for this French flank. They've held off the Portuguese, but as we move to the left, there's a gaping hole here. The remaining French battalion that was in the light stroke line sort of grenadier brigade, that one has failed its destiny test. Not destiny test, it's Falter test. Rolled a 1, got a savoir keeper. It had to flee because its compatriot on the other side of the board was finally volleyed to death by the combined firepower of the British Blair, the skirmishers, and the line battalions, proving more than enough to see off the French battalions. And then when we move across to the village, although the French successfully retook the village with their reserve brigade, the British have finally broken in. Their second veteran brigade, which hadn't done very much all game, moved up from the British right flank and came into the village and just stormed in and caused a retreat result. It went to the second round of combat, and the French threw on their 2 remaining battalions. The British threw in the 95th Rifles as well, and although the French had the slight upper hand in the first round of combat, in the second round of combat the British resolutely won it. Both were rolling pretty much the same dice, so it was on a knife edge, but the British won by 3, causing both French battalions to retreat and that whole brigade to disappear off the board. So in the end of the game, in that last turn, 2 French brigades broke, making 3 in total, and the British have captured the village. So congratulations to Charlie. He's now left Dad to tidy up, as all good 10-year-olds do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the game, and hopefully we'll be back sometime soon.